Final Fantasy. When you mention those two words to a gamer, you're expected to get a plethora of emotions ranging from nostalgia to heartbreak to tears of joy. Regardless of the matter, people have a lot of love for the Final Fantasy franchise. I recently played Final Fantasy VI as a first time player and dropped a full vid on my thoughts of the game, so if you're interested in that, I would greatly appreciate you checking it out and letting me know your thoughts down in the comment. The next on the list and requested by a lot of you all was Final Fantasy X. When I first stepped into the world of Spira, everything just felt so alive, and although this is a PlayStation 2 game and we have the more modern graphics to today's standard and even a remaster of it, you can tell this was by far one of the better looking games at the time in this era. As I mentioned in my Final Fantasy VI vid, I was more of a platformer guy growing up, so while I've heard of Final Fantasy, I never really got into it until later into my adult life. Now that I've finished what most people consider the perfect entry point for a Final Fantasy game, I'm ready to share with you all some of my thoughts on it. What's going on with all you beautiful people, extraterrestrials, or whatever you want to identify yourself as? It's your boy Rob, yes, just Rob, and I'm back with another Final Fantasy video. Today we're going to be going over my thoughts about Final Fantasy X from its story, its characters, gameplay design, and everything else in between. If you're new here and enjoy content such as this, consider subbing to the channel and tapping the bell icon so you never miss a video from yours truly. I also want to mention that this is a PlayStation 2 version, but I did emulate it, so the graphics are going to be a little bit more up to date. I know there is the remaster X2, but I wasn't trying to spend all that money on Steam. I'm a brokey. I want to also point out that this video will contain spoilers for the story, so if you're currently playing or you're interested in playing the game, now is your warning to click off the vid and maybe come back once you're done. Now that we got everything out of the way, everybody strap yourselves in, hands and feet aside to ride at all times, and this is Final Fantasy X and the Price of Sacrifice. But first, somebody cue my intro. In FFX, you're thrust into the story of Tidus, a star blitzball player, which is kind of this weird sport with soccer mixed with water polo. Tidus is the son of former star and hero Zanarkand Jet. At this point, we don't really know the relationship that Tidus has with his father, but we at least know from the beginning section that while Jet is seen as a hero to people of Zanarkand, there's some underlying resentment that Tidus has towards him. Long ago, Jet disappeared from Spira and it left Tidus to fill the shoes that his legendary father once had. More on that later. In the middle of his big game, Zanarkand is attacked by Sin and gets absolutely leveled. Tidus recognizes Auron as he escapes, and we'll get more on Auron later. But they go off to escape Zanarkand while fighting enemies along the way. And in the midst of fighting, this seamlessly black hole appears from the sky and begins to suck the entire town, including Tidus, away. Auron reaches his hand out to Tidus and begins to ask him one simple question. Are you sure? And let Tidus know that this is his story, and it begins here. This opening sequence is fucking awesome, man. Everything just happens so suddenly. 1 second we're watching Tidus sign autographs, to briefly learn about his father Jet, to watching some awesome cutscenes of Blitzball that just pure chaos. And when Auron was letting Tidus know that the journey begins here, it's almost as if he was talking to me as the player, letting me know if I'm ready to begin this journey of Final Fantasy X. After that, Tidus wakes up, but not in Zanarkand or anything familiar, but alone and surrounded by the ruins in a world that looks ancient compared to everything he just lost. No crowds, no lights, no cheers, no blitzball, just silence broken only by the sounds of the ocean. This is Spira. From the very beginning, it's clear that Tidus doesn't belong here. The first group of people that he encounters are the Albeds. Their language is unfamiliar to him, and the people look at him with confusion. The Albeds bring Tidus along their ship and have him do ship work in order to be useful. Tidus begins to befriend one of the members named Riku, who is a young girl and is able to speak the same language as Tidus. Through Riku, we're introduced to a culture of people that has been outcasted and lives on the fringes of Spira, as they have been misunderstood, distrusted, and labeled as heretics for rejecting the Yevon teaching that everyone else seems to so blindly follow. Riku quickly demonstrates her usefulness as she knows how to navigate through the terrain, avoid danger, and stay one step ahead of the threats that linger outside of Zanarkand's ruin. Curious, she begins peppering Tidus with questions, wanting to know where he's from or how he even got into the predicament that he's in. Once Tidus mentions that he's from Zanarkand, Riku looks like she's seen a ghost and warns Tidus to never mention to anyone that he's from Zanarkand, as it's been a ghost town for over 1,000 years. In one of the first major moments of the game, you realize that this world is entirely different from what Tidus is used to. It subtly lets the player, aka me, know that Tidus doesn't just feel out of place, but he shouldn't even be here. Riku tries to brush it off, but the tension lingers, and even though she continues to help Tidus, there's now this unspoken question hanging between them that neither of them can answer yet. When a monster attacks the ship, it causes the two to split up, and Tidus watches ashore on the beaches of Besaid Island. Unlike the ruins and dangers he's seen so far, Besaid feels calm and peaceful. This is where Tidus meets Wakka. Wakka's a blitzball player like Tidus, but unlike him, his team is not very good. Once Wakka hears that Tidus was a star player, he immediately wants to join his team, which he agrees to. This shared connection of blitzball becomes an instant bridge between the two. For the first time since arriving in Spira, Tidus now meets someone who doesn't treat him like a complete anomaly. Wakka is friendly, open, and genuinely curious about Tidus, even if the majority of his beliefs are shaped by the teaching of Yevon. Through Wakka, Tidus begins to learn how the world of Spira works. See, FFS is a game based on the religious principles of the Yevon teachings. We're introduced to the idea of sin, a monstrous force that periodically destroys civilization back to zero, and it's a concept that immediately clashes with everything Tidus knows, as his home of Zanarkand was destroyed by this said sin. It's not said how sin came to be, but if you ask Wakka and pretty much everyone else of the teaching of Yevon, they believe it was due to the Albeds and their use of Forbidden Machina, which are these machines with advanced technology. At this point, Tidus doesn't have the full picture, and in all honesty, neither did I. As Tidus settles to Besaid, he's introduced to the rest of the group, with each one leaving a distinct impression. Lulu is the first. Calm, reserved, and sharp-toned, she clearly acts as the voice of reason within the group. She doesn't openly question Tidus, but there's always a sense that she's watching from a distance to ensure that he isn't a threat. And quick side note, I'll take a Lulu over a Tifa any day of the week. Then there's Kimahri, the hornless Ronso who's quiet, imposing, and fiercely protective. He says very little, but his presence alone tells you that he's someone you want on your side. From the beginning, Kimahri feels less like a companion and more like a guardian, pun intended, but he's someone whose loyalty to the group was long established before Tidus ever arrived. And then there's Yuna. Yuna is introduced not as a warrior like Kimahri, but as a summoner, someone on a pilgrimage to bring hope to the people of Spira by defeating sin. As a summoner, her role is to go from town to town on this pilgrimage to obtain summoning Aeons and eventually obtain the final Aeon, which will be used to defeat sin. There's a quiet strength to Yuna that stands out immediately. She's soft-spoken, polite, and carries herself with a calm acceptance that feels almost unsettling once you begin to understand what her role truly entails. As a first-time player, this is where I felt the game starts to slow down, but not in a bad way. The land of Besaid wasn't about this grand spectacle, it was about grounding me. You gotta remember, up to this point, Sin destroyed Zanarkand and Tidus was transported to this whole new world, so it was nice to just get a breather for a moment. Besides teaching you the rule of Spira, the way the religious beliefs and the roles people are expected to play in this world. And for Tidus, this is the first time since Zanarkand when he's in a welcome environment. Even if he doesn't fully understand the world he stepped into, he's finally surrounded by people who give him a reason to keep moving forward. And with Besaid behind him, Tidus makes the choice to become a guardian for Yuna. What follows isn't just a pilgrimage across Spira, it's a slow unraveling of everything Tidus thought that he knew about this world and himself. And now that we got some of the early story beats out of the way, let's go over the gameplay. Unlike the traditional ATB system that was used in earlier Final Fantasy entries from 4 all the way up to 9, 10 uses what is called a conditional turn-based system, which is CTB for short. Instead of having to wait for an action gauge to fill up in order to attack an enemy, now it's pure turn-based where, hey, it's Tidus' turn, then it's Wakka's turn, then it might be the enemy's turn. It's back to traditional turn-based that we all know to love in our JRPGs. And what I love about Final Fantasy X is in the top right corner, you can see exactly who's at the nets, and you can plan multiple turns ahead and make decisions without feeling rushed. And when you throw things together like haste or slow, it can cause the enemy to lose less turns while you get even more, so I definitely enjoyed it more so in this game. There's also not to mention that you're also able to swap out party members anytime in battle, which is clutch because there may be times, actually a lot of times in the boss fights where, you know, I need to swap in a guy like Auron to use Magic Break, and then I'll swap in Lulu on the next turn so she can come in and do some insane magic damage. The combat really shines in those tough boss fights and those common enemies that just doesn't seem to go down so easily. Like, it's really intuitive for its time. Oftentimes in Final Fantasy VI, I was able to just brute force my way through any boss given the right amount of prep time. But in this game, I had to use my brain a lot. Some enemies will throw counters at you, be able to regain health, and even in the later stage of the game, introduce the zombie status ailments, returns any heal ability targeted towards those zombie party members, will instead do damage to them. Although you have different paths to deviate from when you're leveling your party, every character had a clear role early on. Tidus is this quick and evasive character that can put haste on the entire party so you all get increased action turns. Wakka handle those flying enemies. Lulu is like the big black mage damage dealer. Kimahri is the blue mage, which is more flexible. Then you have Yuna, which supports and summons the Aeons, which is the form of summoning in this game. You know, every Final Fantasy has some form of summoning. It starts off with this simple mechanic at first, but being able to swap any party member at any time makes every character feel important. My gripe with some of the more modern JRPGs is that once you get a good healer and a strong magic and physical damage dealer, and someone who can do a mix of all of them, then you pretty much have a solid lineup for the entirety of the game, and any others that's not on that same level are pretty much left on the back burner. The game encourages strategy over grinding. You're rewarded for understanding enemy types, switching party members mid-battle, and thinking ahead rather than just mashing a task. Progression in Final Fantasy X comes through the Spirit Grid system, and on the surface it does look intimidating, but as you progress you'll start to understand it a bit easier. There's this massive web of nodes, stats, and abilities that feels overwhelming the first time you open it up, but once it clicks, it does become a pretty deep and engaging progression system. Now I must admit, I do prefer to just have my character to level up through a number progression system, and grinding in this game feels a bit more predicated on grabbing the right abilities for your character instead of reaching that arbitrary level number. But I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy my time progressing in the Spirit Grid. However, there is one caveat I want to mention, which is if you do what I did early and miss out on some of the key abilities going off on the character's path. The way the spirit system works is that there's a couple of spirit points, or steps as I like to call it, that shows you how many points you can progress within the grid. The problem is, if you want to go back and maybe grab a health node, you have to spend that point. Now maybe I just completely missed it, or I was having too much fun with the magical green plant, if you catch my drift. But I completely missed Tidus's Hastiga ability, which allows you to put haste on the entire party. Of course I was able to get it back late game, but it probably would have made the earlier game a lot easier had I known that. But I really did enjoy this combat system, man. It was a lot of fun just being able to essentially build the party that I want and being able to swap out all the characters whenever I needed to. It was a lot of fun. As the journey continues and the party leaves the quiet safety of Besaid, the Spirit Grid starts to open up, and so does the world of Spira. On this journey, it didn't feel as though the game was about getting stronger anymore. It was about understanding what kind of world I was walking through. This feeling became impossible to ignore once the party reached Luca. Luca is my favorite town in the game. It's alive in a way that Besaid never was. It's loud, crowded, and for Tidus, it's the first place in Spira that feels familiar. Blitzball is everywhere. The stadium, the fans, the energy, it all pulls him back into who he was before everything was taken from him. To Tidus, Wakka, and the rest of the people in Luca, this isn't just a sport in Spira, it's a way for people to forget about sin, even if only for a moment. When watching Tidus step into the field again with the team, you can feel how badly he wants to hold on to that part of himself. It's the last thread connecting him to Zanarkand, which is a life that no longer exists. Before the tournament even begins, Yuna is suddenly taken by a group of Al Bhed. Again, they're looked at as outsiders since their language is forbidden and their beliefs clash with the teachings of Yevon. So once we hear that she's been kidnapped by them, it's time for immediate action. The party rushes to rescue Yuna, and in the moment, it feels justified, but what gets me about the game after completion is that the Al Bhed in this particular scene never seem to act like the villains. They're frantic and never really have a methodical approach in kidnapping Yuna, and they even seem afraid yet courageous in their actions. What is up with the Albeds, and why are they so hell-bent on kidnapping Yuna? What are they trying to protect her from, exactly? After rescuing Yuna and getting our Blitzball on, just as Luca reaches the emotional high point, Sin makes sure that everyone's remember the truth. It doesn't matter how large the crowd is or how cheerful everyone is, no one is safe as long as Sin still lingers. Sin's attack is sudden and brutal, and what was supposed to be a moment of joy and celebration turns into sadness and sorrow, and for me, this was the point where Sin stopped feeling like a distant myth and became something real, something inevitable. In the aftermath, attention shifts back to Yuna, not because of who she is as a person, but because of what she represents in the world of Spira. She's a summoner on a pilgrimage, a symbol of hope in a world that desperately needs one. People bow, pray, and place their faith in her without hesitation to stop this inevitable entity of sin. Even though Titus still doesn't understand what's being asked of her, you can feel that something about this journey is fundamentally wrong. The tension between hope, faith, and unspoken truth is what quietly drives this game moving forward. After leaving Luca and grabbing more Aeons along the way, the journey starts to take a heavier tone and the road becomes longer and more demanding. It's around this point that we're introduced to Seymour Guido. Seymour is a master, or essentially a leader if you haven't, and also a summoner. For the moment he appears, something about him feels off-putting. He's not loud or threatening, he's actually calm and polite and soft-spoken, but in a rather deeply uncomfortable way. The kind of guy who seems reasonable, but somehow makes every room that he enters colder the moment he walks in. Seymour just isn't another summoner, he's powerful and widely respected amongst the people of Yevon. Even Walker couldn't stop glazing him upon our first encounter. Unlike Yuna, whose kindness feels natural, Seymour's presence feels practiced, almost like someone gave him the blueprint of how a perfect summoner should act. Seymour's interest in Yuna is framed as admiration and respect for both her strength and journey, but underneath all of that is a quiet sense of entitlement, as if Yuna's path is something he believes he already understands. What really stood out to me is how little to no one really questions this and provides no pushback to Seymour. Sure, he is a master and has immense respect in Spira, but this isn't his journey. It's subtle but important because this is one of the first moments where the game maybe start questioning not just the characters, but also the world building. As the journey continues, the party eventually arrives at Mushroom Rock, where the people of Spira have gathered to do something bold and incredibly dangerous. This is where we see the volunteer military organization of the Crusaders and the Albed working together in Operation Mulehand, a full-scale attempt to stop Sin through sheer force. It's the largest show of resistance we've seen so far against Sin, and for the first time in this game, it felt like the world is finally pushing back. If Luca felt calm before the storm, then Mushroom Rock felt like an all-out war. The plan is simple but optimistic. The Crusaders believe that if they can lure Sin in and hit it with enough concentrated firepower, then they might finally be able to bring it down. The Albed provides the tech of the Machinas, while the Crusaders provide the manpower. Even Seymour is present and offers his support to the operation. In the moment, it feels almost hopeful, like this wasn't just some faithful prayer, but a real call to action. But then, Sin arrives, and in just mere seconds, the plan collapses. The weapons barely slow it down, and the people who believe they were finally making a difference are wiped out almost instantly. What's left behind is pure devastation on a massive scale, and we amidst of all of that chaos have to fight Sin. We're even joined by Seymour, who is absolutely strong at this point in the game. He has the highest tier of magic abilities and he hits like a fucking truck. This was a tone shift for me in the game because while we did see Besaid get attacked by Sin and also Luca, Mushroom Rock just fully showed what the potential Sin has even with prep time. It's just something that you can't overpower. It doesn't play by the same rules, and watching this unfold was rough, not just because of the people of Spira didn't triumph, but because there wasn't even a lesson learned in all of this. It was just loss. A loss of hope and a loss of human lives. In the aftermath, Yuna performs Ascending, guiding the souls of the fallen into the far plane, which is the afterlife in this universe. This moment really stuck with me because as beautiful as Ascending looks, everyone else is just filled with grief. Even briefly, we see Titus speak with someone who's absolutely losing his mind, wondering what happened and how is all this occurring. Just seeing all of his friends and people that he deeply cared for as now laying to rest due to Sin. Yuna moves with grace and calm as she's carrying the responsibility of easing suffering that never should have happened in the first place. It reframes what summoners really are in Spirit. They're not saviors, they're caretakers cleaning up the aftermath of an endless cycle. For Titus, this is a turning point. Up until now, Sin has been terrifying but distant. Mushroom Rocks make this more personal. Seeing the destruction in the lifeless bodies of people who genuinely believed they could win sparked something in them. Anger, frustration, hatred. This is the moment where Titus stops accepting sin as a fact of life and starts wanting it gone completely. When speaking to Auron, he drops a bombshell to Titus and mentions that Sin is his father Jet. While Titus can feel a bit of his father's energy in Sin, he doesn't fully believe Auron. If Sin was Jet, why would he go through killing so many innocent people in front of his own son? To which Auron replies to Titus that so he would kill him. When Titus reluctantly asks Auron how he knows all of this, Auron begins to walk away. Titus then tells him not to run away from him, to which Auron replies that Titus is the only one who is running. But running from what exactly? Running in this case means responsibility and being the one who acts when others cannot. If Sin was indeed his own dad, then that would mean that Titus is the one whose choices will ripple through Spiro in ways that no one else can. And that choice was undeniably obvious. Destroy Sin, his father, no matter what the cost is. This little piece of dialogue was one of my favorite moments in the entire game. Auron didn't mock Titus or scold him, he allowed him to voice his frustration and then calmly reminded him that everyone else in Spiro has already accepted their fate. They don't run because they don't believe that there's anywhere to go. Titus is the one who, really the only one who's running, not because he's weak, but because he doesn't want to believe that his father could be Sin and who could be causing all this destruction. This wasn't just a conversation about cowardice or bravery, it was the first time that the game questioned whether Spirit's endless cycle of sacrifice was something that had to continue. And this doesn't just affect Titus as well, this affects the entire party. Wakka, Lulu, Kimahri, and Yuna all had their own ways of coping. Wakka tried to remind everyone that faith will see them through. Lulu stayed calm, analyzing each step like a strategist preparing for the inevitable. And Kimahri said little, but his presence alone was a quiet reassurance. And Yuna carried on her duties with sending the lost souls to the far planes as if her own emotions didn't exist. And yet, here was Titus, angry, scared, and determined, beginning to realize that defeating Sin wasn't just about strategy, it was also personal. As the party traveled from village to village, the quiet moments were almost louder than the battles themselves. Titus watched the world continue despite the loss. Children played in their rebuilt structures, merchants went about their work, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that at any moment everything could be destroyed. Because again, in this world of Spira, that's just what happens when you fight Sin. Sin is always going to come back, he's always going to destroy things, he's always going to take countless lives, and there's just no way to stop this endless cycle. It was in these quiet stretches that Titus began to understand the cycle Spira was trapped in. Every victory was temporary, every hope was fragile, and for the first time, he started asking questions he wasn't sure anyone could answer. Along the way, we meet up with Rikku again in the Moonflow area, and she agrees to join our party. Energetic, curious, and talkative, her playstyle involves around quick agility for extra turns and stealing items from enemies that can be used separately or combined with her overdrive to create many different combinations from her damaging abilities, placing status ailments on enemies, or supporting the rest of her party. Unknowingly to Wakka, Rikku is an owlbear, which would surely be something to bring up later as I progress in the story. As the party continues the pilgrimage, you can feel the weight starting to settle in. Yuna carries herself with this calm grace like someone who already knows how the story ends. Titus, on the other hand, is still trying to understand why everyone in Spira accepts loss as a part of life. Sin isn't just something people fear, it's something that they also plan around, and it's an inevitable fate that will continue its cycle for eternity. The closer I got to Macalania, the more the reality started to sink in for me as a player as well. By the time we reached the temple, it's clear that this journey isn't about defeating Sin anymore. It's about what the world demands in exchange for peace. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Macalania is gorgeous. From the crystallized woods to the calm presence, it's the kind of place that makes you forget what Sin does up to the rest of the world. Up until now, the pilgrimage feels structured and ritualistic, but Macalania is where that structure begins to crack. Macalania is another stop in the pilgrimage where Yuna must acquire the Aeon Shiva. Up to this point, the gameplay loop has been consistent. Travel, beat up some enemies, beat the boss of that area, and acquire the Aeon, then rinse and repeat. And for the most part, Macalania started off as the same until it wasn't. This is where we learn more about Seymour. See, Seymour is this half-human, half-Guado hybrid, and the Guados are these elfish humanoid racing spirit that protects both the Far Plane, Afterlife, and the Macalania Woods. Since Seymour is mixed, he grew up being rejected by both humans and Guados, which caused him to be isolated, and his mother also sacrificed herself to be the Aeon as anima for him. It's a tragic story that almost earns your sympathy. That sympathy collapses when your party uncovers the truth that Seymour murdered his own father, Lord Jyscal, in order to take his place as master. And what was disturbing about this to me was how easily Seymour slips into power afterwards. Once we admit to the people of Macalania just what happened, they believe that it's blasphemy and even blame us for it all. All of this tension finally boils over inside the Macalania temple, where Seymour starts pretending to be who he is. Up until this point, he's been this calm and soft-spoken individual, but once we let the cat out the bag about his father, he drops that mask and we learn that he will ultimately stop at nothing for power. The boss fight against Seymour honestly wasn't anything too difficult, and I think I was a bit over level for this fight. Just take out the guards that counters and heals him with Aeons and work on Seymour with overdrives. Couple hits and bada bing bada boom, he's beat. After defeating Seymour, we're accused of treason even though the guy killed his own father and attacked us first. What type of bullshit is that? We're chased away from Macalania Temple by the Guados, and during our narrow escape, the party is knocked underneath the icy lake by this snow troll thingy, whatever you want to call it. But unknown to the party, Sin is lurking underneath and begins his attack. We see some flashback scenes of Tidus looking over his father, and it's the first time in the game where Tidus accepts that Jet is Sin, and notice he has to end this for his escape. See, Jet doesn't want to be Sin. He doesn't want to cause all this chaos and destruction, but there's no one who can really stop him other than his son. After escaping Macalania, I realized that there is no triumph in beating someone who's as powerful as Seymour, as doing so only causes more consequences with Spira and Yevon. If you dare cross anything that aligns with the teachings of Yevon, then there are serious consequences that follows no matter who you are. And at this point, now we're marked as terrorists and enemies of the teachings of Yevon as we continue on through our pilgrimage. I didn't know what to expect after this point in the story, because now we're marked as enemies of Yevon. We have Tidus realizing that Jet is Sin and finally starting to accept it. This is where the story really started to ramp up for me, and I was ready for the ride. After the Sin attack, we're washed ashore and stranded on the beaches of Beaconnell Island. As we search for everyone, we notice that Yuna is missing. Riku knows this area all too well, as she reveals that her home in the Al Bhed is also nearby this land. Although Riku announced to the rest of the group that she is in Al Bhed before the climax of Macalania, going to the land of the ill-fated Al Bheds is an entirely different story for people who comes from the teachings of Yevon. Riku believes that Yuna will be held up near her home as, of course, the Al Bheds have been looking to kidnap her for the entirety of the game. But for what reason exactly? What I initially love about Beaconnell Island is that it forces the party to navigate in a whole new area that they weren't familiar with, and essentially the home of the people that they've shunned. The script in the story has now been flipped, and now they are the ones in the unfamiliar element. As we head towards the home, we see smoke and clearly know that something isn't right. A full-on battle has broken out as the party rushes over to save Yuna. It's later revealed by the Al Bhed guards that they are being attacked by the Guados, and it actually turns out that Seymour is still alive as he was never sent to the afterlife, just like the previous souls in Mushroom Rock. He wants to marry Yuna and kidnap her in the midst of the fighting. Riku announces that there's a special area in their home where they keep summoners captive so they are unable to continue their pilgrimage. When Tidus begins to question Riku on why this is the case, that is when she reveals the biggest bombshell in the game. At the end of the pilgrimage, when Yuna summons the final Aeon to defeat Sin, she will die. Wow, I was not expecting this at all. What's also bizarre about all of this is that everyone seems to know besides Tidus. This was even hinted at in the previous scene where Tidus was mentioned that as long as Guardians do their job, then they're going to protect Summoners and everything should be okay. Not even knowing that if a Summoner does do their job, the end is going to happen for them regardless. This is why the Al Bheds are shunned away from the people of Yevon. They don't believe in the ideologies. They value life and don't want to see another Summoner, especially someone so young, lose their life just for Sin to eventually come back, and at some point the cycle continues. For the Al Bhed, this is all pointless and a waste of life, but for Yevon, This is the price of sacrifice. A summoner's journey is to sacrifice themselves so people can have hope, even if they know the cycle will continue. For Titus, the realization hits like a punch to the chest. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, all of these emotions just mix together as the person he cares about most is eventually going to die. Yuna is trapped by a fate that she can't escape from, but the thing is, Yuna knows this and even accepts this fact. Everyone does this as the way of the summoner, and the way of the guardian is to protect the summoner on their journey. Titus's frustration isn't just the Al Bez or even the pilgrimage itself, but it's against the world of Spira that demands these cruel sacrifices. It's a pivotal moment in the game and establishes that the stakes are no longer abstract, they're personal. Titus is no longer just trying to defeat Sin to free his father, but he's now looking to protect Yuna against a cycle he knows is wrong and to challenge the very world that forces her into this role. This also affects everyone in the party as well. Lulu, who considers Yuna as a little sister, initially tried to stop her long before the events of the game, but Yuna was headstrong of becoming a summoner. Wakka's faith is also challenged and begins cracking more than ever as Riku believes that one person shouldn't have to be sacrificed just for the happiness of the world. However, Wakka, though hesitant, implies that ultimately this was Yuna's choice and she knew what she signed up for. It really had me as the player questioning if one life was worth the safety of countless others. After the chaos ensues, the party escapes and they're heading to Bevelle to rescue Yuna from this wedding. By this point in the journey, Seymour has stopped feeling like just another villain and starts feeling like a constant reminder that death in Spira doesn't mean closure. He's unsent, driven by obsession and power, and a warped sense of salvation. Once the party arrives in Bevelle, they learn the truth of the marriage. Yuna's being forced into a political marriage with Seymour, and Seymour isn't looking for love. However, he wants to become the next savior of Spira. He sought to use Yuna as his final Aeon, which would allow him to gain the power to annihilate Sin and also save Spira. As we fight through waves of enemies at the wedding, we encounter Yuna and Seymour. We're left under the impression now that we have to stop Seymour yet again as his plan is now more grand than ever. And as we escape the wedding, we eventually do get that second encounter with him in the High Bridge and in this new form. Damn, he ugly. Anyways, he's still not really all that much of a threat. I don't know, maybe I was too overleveled, but he at least throws out more status ailments against us, but with Yuna's Asuna or items, it's not that much of an issue fighting him. And surely this is going to be my last time fighting this guy. Right? Right? After everything with Seymour, Bevelle, and the growing cracks in Yevon, the journey finally slows down for a moment. And it's here, away from the chaos, away from the expectations, that we get one of the most beautiful scenes in Final Fantasy X. Titus and Yuna. Up until now, their relationship has seemed subtle. Shared glances, awkward jokes, Titus trying to make Yuna laugh in a world that refused to give her a reason to smile, but this is the first time that they're truly honest with each other. Yuna finally admits what she's been carrying the entire journey, that she knew from the very beginning what becoming a summoner meant, that her pilgrimage wasn't about hope or glory, it was about acceptance, about dying so Spira could live another calm life. And for Titus, this is devastating, because for the first time he fully understands that this world isn't just cruel, it's designed to take people like Yuna and call it holy. Everything he's been running from, questioning, and rebelling against suddenly has a face, and it's Yuna. And in the icy woods of Macalania, they embrace each other, not because their future is certain or because things will ultimately work out for them, but because love, even in the doomed world, is still worth holding on to. Yuna was able to find her comfort in what is soon to be her ultimate sacrifice, while Titus isn't just fighting for Spira anymore, he's fighting for Yuna. Mount Gagazet stands as the final trail before Zanarkand. For Kimahri, this is home. Doronso, who he once called his family, now stands in judgment as, while they allowed the rest of the summers to pass, they denied him. See, his past is laid bare in his broken horn, the same that he carried in silence. Before the events of the game, Kimahri had his horn broken off by Biran in a scuffle that they had. Although Kimahri is taller than most humans, he's smaller than the average Ronso, and that's evident that he comes face to face with Biran. Looking to reclaim closure, Kimahri challenges both the Ronsos. Although Kimahri wasn't my favorite party member, this moment was awesome. It's a fight that's not about honor, but about Kimahri becoming something greater than a Ronso who casted him out. And after defeating the Ronso, we continue on our journey, and both Tidus and Riku begin brainstorming ways to defeat Sin without Yuna having to die. But just when the mountain begins to feel quiet, Seymour returns. Again. Yo, I swear this man showed up more than Team Rocket in the episode of Pokemon. By now, Seymour is just an inevitable obstacle in this journey that refuses to move on, and instead of becoming the savior of Spira, he now just wants to become Sin itself. This was the first skill check for me in this game. He wasn't too difficult once I figured out his new playstyle of his, but immediately I did die in a couple of my earlier runs. He has the ability to place your party in a zombie status, and when healed, they eat damage instead. This could be negated by Yuna's Reflect ability to have Seymour cast zombie on himself and be withered down by his own heal. After defeating Seymour, the only destination that lies beyond the mountain is the 1,000-year-old ghost town, Zanarkand. Along the way to Zanarkand, we're met by this beautiful waterfront. Yuna reveals that these are Faith, but someone is currently using them. Suddenly, Tidus gets knocked back into this dream world, and in his hometown of Zanarkand? What? We then see a Faith who gives us the rundown about this dreamlike version of Zanarkand that we're in. See, we know the whole Summoner defeating the Sin idea was a sham, but we didn't know why that was the case. Yu Yevon was a former ruler and powerful summoner of the ancient city of Zanarkand, and he became so obsessed with preserving his city that after they lost the war against Bavel, he transformed the citizens of Zanarkand into the Faith and this dream of an illusionary city while creating Sin to protect it. All the citizens of this Zanarkand, including both Tidus and Jet, are these dreaming Faiths. That's when the Faith asks Tidus to end this cycle as they're tired of dreaming. However, once Yu Yevon is defeated, all the Faiths will disappear as, again, this is a dream of Zanarkand. Okay, time out. We just learned that Yuna could potentially die, and now you're telling me that Tidus is not even real? Well, he technically is, but not quite. Like, this is a lot to process. And here I was thinking that Yuna's sacrifice was the biggest reveal in this game. We're then transported back into the reality as Tidus has completely passed out while everything was going on. He ultimately decides not to reveal he's a Faith to the party because he doesn't want to jeopardize the mission. With Yuna now accepting her inevitable fate more and more, and now Tidus realizing that he's a Faith, Zanarkand was becoming more of a high stakes gamble, and I was ready to go all in. This is it. This is what everything in this journey has led up to. This is even more evident as we get a brief flashback of Yuna sitting in the Calm Lands as she records her spear. She's reflecting on this journey as she knows what she must do, as this is the path that she chose as a summoner. She is grateful for each of her guardians on this journey, from Kimahri watching over her as a child and always liking his horn, to appreciating the scolding from Lulu and growing up with walking beside and watching him play blitzball. And when it's time to speak on the newest guardian, Tidus, she's struggling to find the words to say, but you can tell what's in her heart. Love. Man, this scene genuinely had me fucked up and was wondering who was cutting onions in my room. I tell everyone, the most important thing that you can always have in a game is strong writing, and this scene is when I knew this game was going to be one of my favorites. I knew and have been preparing for this moment all the way back in Beaconnell Island, but it still just hits hard knowing that she finally accepts it. According to what I read online, Yuna's only 17 in the events of the game, so to be so young and know that your death will be inevitable at the end of this journey, but continue to persevere takes real strength. To see her own father go through that same journey and see that everyone is happy now that Sin is gone, but you as a 7-year-old child at the time, realizing that your dad will never be able to hold you ever again it's just, man. The writers were absolutely on point in this scene. And when Yuna begins to speak on Tidus, you can tell that she's overwhelmed by emotion because this is probably the first time she's ever fallen in love, and now it's going to be stripped away from her for the sake of some faulty religion. And I also want to say, I think at this moment, she thought about potentially not even continuing the pilgrimage. It was a truly heartfelt moment in the game that reminded me as we were reaching Zanarkand that the stakes were at an all-time high, and this almost felt as this spear was a eulogy for Yuna. By now, Yuna is fully aware of what must be done of the people of Spira and believes her sacrifice is necessary. Just a shift for her tone proves she's braver and more headstrong than ever as she is the first to leave and head out to Zanarkand. The ruins of Zanarkand aren't glorious like the last previous of towns we traveled to. It's a hollow and silent grave for a dream that never truly ended. As we battle through the ruins, listen to one of my favorite songs from the game, we reach the Zanarkand cloister and, oh god, not another puzzle, man. We're met by the spirit of Lord Zaun, who was the first fate of the final summoning, and he tells us that Lady Yunalesca awaits. Lady Yunalesca was the first summoner to defeat Sin, so she's all worldly powerful in this universe. Yunalesca reveals to everyone that in order to summon the final Aeon, someone close to Yuna, someone she loves, must be sacrificed as a fate. So not only Yuna, but also someone else needs to be sacrificed in order for this final Aeon to be summoned. In this moment, everything collapses. Yuna's journey was never about saving Spira, it was about perpetrating the cycle. A calm sense of peace built by continuous loss and sacrifice. A hope built by grief. We even see flashbacks of this very moment where Yunalesca revealed the same happened for Yuna's father Braska and Jet, and also Auron. Braska obviously became the summoner while Jet became the Fae for the final Aeon. While Yuna and Wakka volunteer to become the Fae, Tidus looks for a way to break this cycle. When we confront Yunalesca, we learn that sin is eternal and the cycle will always continue and sin will always be reborn. When the final Aeon is used to defeat Sin, the Aeon will take its place and become Sin, which is how Zek became Sin. Even Wakka, a devoted follower of Yevon, to a T can't even believe what he's hearing. Even the people of Spira atone for their crimes, Sin will always keep coming back, which goes against their own teachings of Yevon. In Yunalesca's eyes, Yevon's teaching in the final summon to give the people hope, and without that hope, they would drown in their sorrow. So, in her eyes, even if it means sacrificing people every few generations, it's necessary. Yuna agrees to not have anyone sacrificed by becoming a Fae, which upsets Yunalesca and leads to one of my favorite quotes from my favorite character in the game.
Now! This is it! Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands!
You know what? Hell yeah! Let's go whoop Yunalesca's ass. Yunalesca's fight isn't hard, and I was honestly hitting her like a truck, but she is tricky, especially in her third phase. See, up to this point, you usually want to get rid of status ailments when they're inflicted on your party. This would be the case for Yunalesca in her second phase, as she immediately casts zombies on her at the party. However, in her third phase, she has an attack that can one-shot everyone in the party that's not in zombie status. I realized after a couple of failed attempts that the key was to have at least one party member not be in zombie, and as she was prepping for the one-shot move, have Yuna summon an Aeon to avoid all of that. Again, while the CTB system is a rather simple mechanic, if I wasn't able to swap party members in and out at will, I don't think I would have been able to defeat her. After the boss fight, we are met by Faith and learn that in order to stop the cycle, we must defeat Yu Yevon, the monster who created Sin, and to do so, we gotta go inside of Sin to beat him. As we head back to the airship to process the info we received, we head straight to Sin and begin to take the fight head on to him. Man, fuck this fight. It's one thing to have to fight and deal with Sin in the first place, which is not much of an issue, and even in the second phase, he's not a problem. It's when you're in that third phase where you're now only fighting the head of Sin. That's because once his overdrive meter fills, he would immediately wipe out the entire party with a one-shot ability. That's just pure BS. Yunalesca's fight felt more like a well-crafted strategy and really had me utilizing all the tools and mechanics in the CTB system, but this one just felt like I had to get lucky and survive. What made this worse at the time was I didn't even have all of my overdrives filled for the character, so this was damn near impossible to do. I had to go back to my earliest save point at the time, which luckily wasn't too far, and pretty much grind until the overdrives were filled for each character, since you gotta fight this guy 3 times in a row with no dungeon area. Annoying boss fight, but nonetheless, we got it done. We then go inside of Sin and whoa, this area is cool. It's like this cloudy labyrinth of a dungeon area that is a pretty good area for grinding, but after the bullshit I was put through with Sin, I was already overleveled and had max spear grid progression on pretty much everyone. After progressing up the dungeon, we're met with this stairs of some sort, and at the top is, oh my god, man, why won't you just die already? Seymour now thanks us for being Yunalesca, as there's no way for us to stop Sin or him. Yeah, whatever that means. I missed the part where that was my problem. Let me go ahead and whoop this guy's ass real quick and send him to the afterlife. I'll be right back, guys. Whew, now that that's finally over, let's get back to the game. After progressing through the dungeon and Tidus making a quick acid trip, we finally are met with by far the toughest boss in the game, Jet. He tells his old buddy Auron that he's late and greets Tidus. I enjoy this moment because before we learn that Jet is Sin, Tidus seems to have a lot of resentments towards his dad for being so tough on him as a kid, but through the events of the game, we get to see how much Tidus' character has developed. He immediately hates his father but understands the card that he's been dealt to him and knows what he must do. Jet turns to Braska's final Aeon and is even bigger than when we fought him as Sin. Just the sheer scale of this guy made me realize that this is the fight to save Spira and to stop Sin once and for all. Oh my fucking goodness. This fight almost made me push my scalp back. I can't lie to y'all. If Sin felt like an appetizer, this was definitely like a full course 5-star entree meal. This fight really almost made me uninstall for a minute. He has 60k HP in his first phase, which isn't a lot, and honestly it wasn't an issue once I learned to get rid of the pillars as quickly as possible that heals him. It's that damn second phase, man. So you already have to deal with him doing his typical good amount of damage in his first phase and the pillars being able to heal him. He's not able to damage and petrify a party member, and if he does his AoE sweep attack after that, he can completely take them out of the battle. And in this game, if that happens, you don't get to swap anyone in as a replacement. You're literally just fighting with only 2 party members for the duration of the fight. He gets even more turns, and even with the addition of placing slow gun on all of the enemies, he can still just simply remove it, so go figure. He also has his own overdrive with one-shot potential, and the only effective way I was able to counter in my playthrough was to swap to a unit Aeon overdrive and get as much damage done as possible from that ability before he eventually gets a billion turns and kills my Aeon. After this boss fight alone, I never want to hear anyone say that turn-based combat is boring. You just don't know how to strategize, because this boss fight was the ultimate test of the game mechanics. I had to plan every turn in this fight. It was honestly truly a great boss design. It made you feel like you're fighting for the world. Even when I finally did eventually beat him, I felt like I just got lucky enough to have one Aeon with overdrive left, and I had him at just a low enough health to guarantee a kill. After finally beating Jet, Tidus embraces his father and they both finally share a heartfelt moment with each other, and Yuna goes and sends off Jet to the afterlife. Quickly afterwards, Yu Yevon appears and shows himself as now the true final boss. This is where Tidus tells everyone that after this fight, that he's pretty much a faith and he would disappear after beating Yu Yevon. Tidus tells everyone to focus on the mission as everyone knows what must be done no matter the cost. Yuna begins to summon her Aeons one by one as Yu Yevon possesses them. What's so cynical in all this is right as we begin summoning these Aeons, they all have their own message essentially telling us to end their suffering as they're tired of this cycle as well. And after all Aeons are defeated, the only thing left is Yu Yevon himself. Honestly, it's a cakewalk boss fight, and after the eye pulling I was doing with Jet, I'm definitely fine with that. Yu Yevon likes to heal every time he's attacked, so if you place a zombie or reflect on him, he literally can't do anything. With Yu Yevon now defeated, the people is now and forever free from sin. Auron also revealed that he too is unsent, and he's been wandering around and watching over Tidus as he was never sent after being killed by Yunalesca. Yuna reluctantly sends him off as Auron's story is now complete. Tidus's body begins to literally start fading, and he tells Yuna that he has to go, and she begins to frantically shake her head no. As Tidus walks off, Yuna rushes to him for one last hug, but she goes right through his body. As Tidus began to wither away, Yuna utters the words she's always meant to tell Tidus. She loves him. Man, what a bittersweet ending, and honestly a perfect ending to what I can consider now one of my favorite games ever. Throughout the entirety of the game, I was trying to figure out what was Tidus' story in this game. Everyone had their own individual moments, from Wakka finally realizing that Yevon's teaching wasn't all that holy and the Al Bheds aren't these evil people, to Lulu being able to live with her perceived guilt, and not being able to protect her first summoner, to Kimahri getting his respect from his Ronso brethren, and obviously you have Yuna's journey. But it was this scene right here where I finally understood Tidus' role in this game. Tidus makes the ultimate sacrifice in choosing to vanish away from a world that he doesn't even come from, but because he was transported to this world with no way to ever get back to his Zanarkand, he was able to meet people along the way and share bonds that was far deeper than what he had back in his hometown. He was able to find purpose and reason for his life other than being the star player of the Zanarkand and the son of Jet, but now he's the savior of Spira. Just like his father, he was able to be seen as a hero, and as I closed out the game one last time, I was left on the one final impression. Final Fantasy X was never truly about defeating sin, it was about asking what was the price of sacrifice and who has to pay for it. This was Tidus' story, and this was Final Fantasy X, The Price of Sacrifice. Thank you all for watching the video. I truly hope you enjoyed it because it was definitely a lot to work on. I wanted to keep the video at a certain time limit, but as I was writing the script, there was no way I was going to be able to go over some of the main talking points of the game, as well as my own personal experience playing it without going over that limit. Plus, I felt it would be a better overall experience to come from the heart when working on this vid, because I would want people who played the game before to hopefully get that same feeling I had playing it as a first time player. The next FF game up will be 16, but after working on this vid and knocking out 4 FF games in such a short time, I honestly need a break. But I will make sure to have some content for you all to enjoy in between that break. If you all liked the video, then go ahead and tap that like button for me on your way out, and consider subbing to the channel and tapping the bell icon so you never miss a vid from yours truly. I hope you all stay blessed. It's been your boy Rob. Yes, just Rob, and I'm out. Peace.